when a speaker, just like that, when a speaker starts and then you press it. So we've got some more in the chat, and I can see some familiar faces and names around there. Welcome, everyone. There's some people we know there as well, Robin.
There's Marilena I've spotted. Hello.
Yeah. And Benita.
Hello.
Where's Benita? Missed you. Let's have a look. Where are you, Benita? There you are. Got
Yay.
you.
And it's always nice because there's some people that I don't know as well. Claire, hello, your hair's grown and it's nice and curly. And so just to share as well, there were almost 100 last count last night. People registered. So Robin, clearly it's a topic people are interested in. People want to hear your thoughts. And the way we've done this is we had a really brief chat together. Robin doesn't know what I'm going to ask him. That's been done purposefully because when we're in supervision, we never know what it's emergent. We never know what's going to come up next for us as supervisors or come up next for the people that we're supervising as well. And my hand's really busy here, admit. So I'll give it one more minute just because people are still popping in.
Hello, Chaz. There's another one recognised.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
And Julie's there.
Let's have a look. Where's she, Julie? I can't see
Mark.
play. But good. So Carolyn, your surname is Didsbury. That's where I come from.
Oh, really?
I've never heard it as a surname before.
Sadly, not the family estates. Otherwise, I would be on a beach somewhere right now.
Right. Oh, Moira. Hi, Moira. Yes, good. Oh, quite a few people.
Lovely.
Worked with.
Might be interesting. Usually it's where are you in the world? We've got some of that in the chat. In brief, what brought you here today may be interesting.
It's a nice question. People could put it in the chat while we're waiting for the last few.
Yeah.
Here.
And I will save the chat afterwards, Robin, in case you don't manage to read all the comments right now.
Yeah. What brought you here?
People from all over, Italy, Dubai, Canada. Coherence. Hi, Katie. Singapore. Helen, you made it. Joy. Beautiful. Love.
Thank you.
And the doorbell has slowed down.
Yeah, people are saying where they're from, which is interesting. And what brought you here? In love with supervision.
Love to learn more. Connecting and interested to hear Robin.
Oh, let me switch my email off so you don't hear that clunking. Good.
And Thea's read your books, interested to learn more.
How about we turn that on its head just for starters and say this could be about unlearning? So let's start off a bit provocatively from the word go, because I think what we do, and I'm pitching straight in, is that all right, Claire?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think the idea of learning, if we unpack it a little together, what's behind it is I'm not enough, I need more.
Mm.
Would you say that was fair? Yeah, now that's fine if you're learning a language or something like that, when you're learning a particular skill. But here, what we're doing is we're looking at what's getting in the way of us being naturally together. If we take that relationship is primary, you can relearn such things as relationship skills, but I would put it another way and say what we're really trying to do is to remove the blocks to love. So I could equally well say this is about unlearning. I'm just putting it out as an idea. I didn't expect to start there, but when I saw people write learning, I just go, oh yeah. And I remember once, it was in Ireland, and I said to the group, I hope you get nothing from this. And people got it, I think. And one guy said, I can go home now, I've got all I need. So it's kind of paradox. I'm playing with the idea of learning and unlearning with you. So, okay, having started there, Claire, why don't we go with your first question and see where we go from there?
Well, I was going to introduce you, Robin, but I also feel that people have come to hear you, so they probably know a little bit about you already. We know that you were one of the co-creators of the seven-eyed model. So I've got an unusual question. Have you got a favorite eye from the seven-eyed model?
I have, as it happens, but like everything else, we overplay our strengths. And so because I've got, it's actually I6 or mode 6, where the supervisor looks at what's happening inside them in the present. And that brings us into the here and now. It actually, if we unpack it, there's a lot to be said around mode 6 that is very useful, both theoretically, practically, and so on. So to give the short answer, mode 6. And if you want to ask me a question that will help expand on it, I'm up for that too.
So obviously it's not on my cheat sheet, but the one that came into my mind was, is mode 6 like self-supervision in the moment?
It's reporting what's going on inside myself. So it is a form of self-supervision. And I don't know, would you like me to explain why I like it so much and the theory behind it?
Love to.
Okay. So imagine, Claire, you're my supervisee and you're bringing Fred, who's your client or coachee or whatever word we use. Yes. Okay. So the idea behind it, and I'll try and go really slowly because I think I think it's quite subtle, is that it's based on a theory, and I'll put it in the chat. Called projective identification. The idea behind projective identification I found is absolutely fundamental to my work, is that whatever you cannot manage in yourself, you will unconsciously communicate to the people you're with, and even more so your nearest and dearest, but to the world at large. So if I can't manage my fear, I will get other people to be frightened. And what I'm doing unconsciously is saying, see how it feels to be me. And also, if you manage to hold me and not be frightened, you're also acting as a role model that is useful for me. So we have the idea that bullies are cowards. What they're doing is they're not managing their fear, they're making other people feel their fear. Do you understand? Does that make sense to people? Whatever I can't feel, I will. So what we're doing in supervision isn't just about supervision at all. It's a life skill. Because actually you can apply it walking down the street, you can apply it with your loved ones, you can apply it with friends, you can apply it with at work. I try and notice exquisitely, and I say exquisitely because can be quite subtle, how I feel in somebody's presence. So if I notice myself feeling envious, it's not that I haven't got envy in me, but actually, why do I feel envious with X and not with Y? And there's one person I can think of very easily who I always feel less than in their presence. So rather than going into, I must get a bigger car or I must take another degree or whatever, I speculate to myself, I wonder if this person feels less than and is getting me to feel. Now, of course, I have my own issues about deprivation and envy, but I don't feel that everywhere. So I, again, pay exquisite attention. So you bring in your coachee, client, whatever you want to call them, Fred. Fred puts their distress into you. And you have to be a willing recipient, obviously, but that's part of the work. And then what you do is you've absorbed it from Fred and you put it into me. So this has very much come from a therapeutic background, but is so relevant to all of our work. So I know I'm talking therapeutic language, but the idea of paying attention to what's going on in the here and now is relevant spiritually, therapeutically, coaching, whatever. It's relevant to all communication. And in mode 6, I'm focusing on what's going on inside me. And I might do a demonstration of it if it was useful to people. So I focus on what's happening on me, and you're thinking, what's that got to do with anything? Robin is just saying he feels upset or frustrated or sad or whatever. How's this got to be relevant? But if you take the idea that you've absorbed it from Fred, by talking about how I feel, I'm picking up the unconscious communication between you and Fred. So paradoxically, even without your talking about Fred, as soon as you begin to speak, I can pick up a lot about Fred from just the way you're communicating to me by focusing on myself. It's so counterintuitive.
And so interesting because in the chat, Francesca, hi Francesca, you just put a name to something I've been reflecting on, and Elisa agrees with that as well.
Yeah. Of course, Jonathan, anything can be used as a defense. This isn't me. Of course, it's always me and the other person. I couldn't feel if it wasn't inside, but it can be used as a defense. But I'm trusting that we use it as information. And the test is whether the other person resonates with it. So if I say, you brought Fred, Claire, and if I say, I'm feeling really frustrated, it could be, if I was using it as a defense, I'm frustrated with you, Claire. Or it could be, I'm frustrated in my life, and here's a good opportunity for me to just discharge it. But I assume enough, I know myself well enough to know whether it's the here and is defense or not. And I say, you know, Claire, you're talking about Fred, and I feel uneasy, frustrated, tense, whatever. And then you say, yes, that if it lands, that's how I feel with him. And then we get the dynamic of your relationship through working with our relationship. And it's incredibly powerful. And I probably overuse it because I could just sit there doing mode 6 all the time.
Yeah.
Probably, no, I think this would have been true of me in the past, have underused mode 7, which is looking at the wider system. And I think if I had to crudely differentiate. I think that coaches are better at mode 7 and looking at the system, and therapists are better at looking within. And of course, both are necessary.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sort of thinking as well, when we supervise, to have a reflection afterwards, scan the model, where is my go-to? And in service of my clients, where else do I need to work with them?
I want to give a, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I just went into my remembering an example, and I have written about projective identification. If it really interests people, I could send you the chapter I wrote in a book on it. But just the power of it. So I'm talking in a group, and I'm saying that if somebody makes you feel frightened, they're probably very frightened themselves. And there's a gasp in the group. And this woman is working, I've given this example in another demonstration, in another talk. This woman says, I'm working with this young person and she terrifies the staff. No one has ever thought that she might be frightened. We're so busy protecting ourselves that we've never thought that she may be frightened. 4 of us go to wake her up in the morning. It was residential. And 3 of us outside the room in case she kicks off. 1 of us goes in. She's drugged, so she's probably woozy. What would you like? 4 people to wake you up frightened of you? You're going to. So what she did is she went up to her as a frightened person rather than as an aggressive person, soothed her, and this so-called really aggressive person just had her head on this staff member's lap, and everyone was saying, how have you done this? So that's probably the best demonstration ever of somebody who was actually very violent, just through understanding projective identification, completely turned the whole history of that client, young person, around. So I didn't know we were going to start there, but you asked me my favorite mode. And if you can go within, and if you can't go within, and this is partly a natural thing for me to do, and partly it's a skill that could be developed. If you cannot do that, you're missing so much information. And I think some people are very frightened of going there, or think even more, think that we shouldn't be going there. There might be a should about looking into the internal world. And on a recent course that we did, a supervision of spiritual practice, the second module, which was in the second group intake, which was in Findhorn, we looked at supervision as autobiography. That we are always coming from our history. You sitting there doing this it comes from your history. Me joining you is coming from my history. We cannot avoid our history. So what I would suggest to people is that if you want to do this work as a supervisor, the more work you do on yourself, the more resources you have to spot the projective identifications, the parallel process, or whatever what you're working with. And I think there's some resistance to that in some quarters. I may be wrong, but I really, if you're asking me what I stand for, my favorite mode, then I really say, really look at yourself. It is the most valuable resource. You take you with you wherever you go. And I was at a recent workshop, and they said, we can teach you skills, but what we're going to teach you is how to work with the part of you that doesn't want to use the skills. And I went, whoa, that is really interesting. Because I could teach you the 7 modes now. I could go through it. But can I teach you when you're going to be avoiding a certain mode? Because you maybe don't want to look within, or say with the therapist, they don't want to look at the system. They just want to have them and their client. And they don't want to look at the wider system. So, yeah, a lot from that question. Let's have a look at the chat for a moment.
Yeah.
Parallel processing by another name, Carolyn. It's actually using projective identification to spot the parallel process. And parallel process is basically what happens between Fred and Claire is going to happen between Claire and Robin.
So, Robin, is there a top tip for people to strengthen this muscle?
I want to be a bit provocative and say, yeah, have a crisis. It's just like we're so well defended as human beings, and of course I include myself totally, that actually it takes something like a crisis or something like that to really go behind all the. So is there a top tip? I would say have a crisis, but other than that, which is a bit provocative and a bit, I'm just playing. Other than that, I would say really do the work, the inner work, for the love of it. Because if you do it for the love of it, it will emanate from you. If you're doing it as a tip to become a better coach or a better supervisor, you're using it as a strategy to, as a means, not as an end. And I say, do this work, the inner work, for the love of it. If you do it for the love of it, you cannot not be a better supervisor. You cannot not.
And we've got a comment there in the chat, Robin, from Mark. Can you repeat? We can teach you skills, but what was the second bit?
It was something like, we can teach you the skills, but what we're going to do, said the weekend workshop, the facilitator, what they said is, but we're going to teach you how to, I could get the book, but something like how to, what you do when you don't want to use them. What they were doing was they're looking at marital work. So they were teaching you skills for conflict resolution. But we all know that when we're in the middle of a big argument with our partners, we don't want to use any of our skills. So they're saying so they were teaching us what to do. You know the skills, but you don't use them. I would suggest that a lot of people know the supervision skills, but for some reason don't use them. And that takes us on to another topic, which I love talking about because it's so interesting, which is fear and shame. And we don't recognize how we're wanting. I don't think we recognize how much fear comes into the work. We're quite adept at overlaying our feelings of fear or shame with techniques and strategies and so on. So I think there might be one of the things that I was teaching about is looking at failure. And can we dare, that's why I say have a crisis. Can we dare to fail? Can we dare to say, I don't know? Can we dare to say, I'm stuck? Can we sit together in not knowing? I think it's hard until it isn't. When you see that not knowing is actually a tremendous resource and not a cop-out, because it's not taking away my responsibility, but it's saying we don't know. We don't really know. Something that looks, if you review your lives, you see that something that you thought was awful turned out to be wonderful in the long run, and something we thought was good, like falling in love, turned out to be a disaster. I'm being playful. Don't take me too literally.
Rekha, you've got a question.
Rekha, do you want to ask your question?
I'm just thinking she might have frozen.
Yes, I think she looks pretty gross. Oh, she's moving now.
Do you want to go off? Yes, she's there. Hi, Rekha.
Hi. Thank you, Robin and Dr. Claire. I'm still processing the aspect of projective identification that you spoke initially. Would you be able to give us an example of how projective identification can help us to also understand the concept of transference as well? That might be very pertinent and helpful to understand. or how we can notice that there is a transference that's happening?
Okay. If there's transference that's happening, and it always happens, it
Yes,
cannot not happen. There's
right.
always going to be, there'll be some transference happening now. I'm the teacher, so all your history is about teachers and how well they dealt with you and so on. Cannot not be happening. You're in a group. There'll be transference in the group. Can I speak up in a group? Will I look stupid? Or so transference is happening all the time, is number one. But what can give me a clue to it is how I feel when I sit with you. So if I start to feel, if I start to give you lots of advice, I go, oh, that I don't usually do that. I wonder if there's some transference. She's expecting me to be like her father.
Okay.
So I use how I feel to spot possible transference. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
It's still using what I feel as there's the guide.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure. I'm trying to also look at the chat as well, but Claire, I'll have to trust that you're doing that.
I'm trying. Yes. Yeah. It quietened down for a minute there. Yeah. So let's go somewhere different. So one thing you mentioned really briefly, Robin, is supervision is for anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Say more on that.
Well, why wouldn't you want to have it? If it helps you to work better and not to produce more, but actually enjoy your work, be at ease, understand what's going on, help you feel more fulfilled. I think there's a danger of using supervision or coaching or anything to be more productive, you know, or climb the ladder, the career ladder or whatever. What I want to impart, and which is why I can keep going after nearly 50 years, is you do it for the love of it. You come to supervision not to be, well, it will help you to be better at work, but it's like, why wouldn't you want to self-inquire? Why wouldn't you want to find out what's blocking you? Why wouldn't you want to know yourself? It's a very different energy. It's not geared to results so much. And paradoxically, the less you try and gear it to results, the more the spin-off happens, because you come out feeling more like you've let go of a burden.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question?
You have. And another bit to that, I was thinking, so people train in supervision,
Yeah.
and sometimes there's people who just have I know you may not be keen on the word competencies, for example, but sometimes have the innate personality, way of being. Do you feel that people have to be trained in supervision, or some people just naturally, organically do it without even knowing? They do it well.
Both.
And I shouldn't be saying that because I train people in supervision too.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people are more naturally inclined towards it. A friend of mine, a so-called friend of mine, said, if it moves, Robin will supervise it. So it was a kind of, so I have a natural, I think supervision is autobiography. I really want the group to hold on to that idea. I've survived in my family by supervising it. I could see what was going on in the family, and I kind of became the little therapist, precocious little boy that I was, but it was my survival strategy. So I'm naturally a supervisor. But that doesn't mean to say I don't learn from other supervisors or that I shouldn't train anything, but actually some people are more naturally disposed to it. But I do believe I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't believe that some training was valuable. And certainly people refer to the seven-eyed model as being really useful because it gives them a map of what they're doing. So some people like you or me might do instinctively. It helps to, when people say, well, what exactly are you doing? I can say, well, actually, I'm using mode 3 or mode 7 or mode whatever I'm doing at the moment. And that can be quite holding for the supervisory dyad to actually locate ourselves on the map.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I know is close to your heart is spirituality and supervision. So what ways does spirituality show up in the work?
It would be like saying, oh, well, I was going to give an analogy. I don't think it's quite right. I always want to say, how can it not? But, and why I was a bit cautious then is that I don't want spirituality to become a thing. And it's just almost like, well, I'm spiritual. Are you? And then it becomes a new classification. So having used the word and edited a book on the topic and so on, I now find myself a bit cautious. It can become a new hierarchy. Okay, so you want to get to the top, spirituality and supervision. Do you see what I mean? So I'm sort of being a bit cautious around the word. But having said that, I will then go on and say how it affects my work. But I just wanted to put in that as a sort of little warning, if you like, that I don't want it to become a better than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So we go back to the beginning about unlearning. And one of my favorite poets is the Sufi poet Hafiz. I'll write in the name in the chat. I just adore Hafiz. And sometimes we start our course supervision training with a poem from Hafiz, pulling the chair from beneath your mind and watching you fall upon God. What else is there for Hafiz to do that's any fun in this world? Pulling the chair from beneath your mind and watching you fall upon God. If you don't like God, put truth, love, consciousness. It doesn't matter what word you use. So what we're doing, it relates to the unlearning I said at the beginning. What we're trying to do is to actually dismantle people's belief systems. Because we're so conditioned. I mean, so conditioned. Even we're conditioned at the way we look at conditioning. And the best I can do is to actually raise the consciousness in myself and in others around it. But I would still say I was very conditioned. And I once said this, I'll see what happens if I tell this story. I once said how conditioned we all are. And this woman pipes up and she says, I'm not. And I said, so you think. And then she said, I don't need a man to tell me how to think. And half the group cheered her and the other half went, you've just proved his point. He's not a man telling you how to think. He's a man telling us that we're all conditioned. And he's not even a man doing it. He's just stating it. So what we're trying to do in supervision, what makes it so-called spiritual, and I say so-called because I don't want to be attached to the word, is we're helping. My wish is for all of us to be free. Because when I'm in the presence of somebody who is free or free-ish, then I can relax too. If I'm in the presence of somebody who's deeply attached to their core beliefs and how we've got to do it and the shoulds and so on, I immediately start to contract myself. So there's a selfish part of this. In wanting your freedom, it's also giving myself the opportunity to be with you in a more playful way.
And going to the potentially the opposite of freedom and playful, what ways does shadow side show up in the work?
Everything that's the shadow side of spirituality is superiority. And I have really literally been with I remember doing a some can work with the spiritual community. And they said, our previous supervisor started with the meditation in this kind of very holy voice. And I said, thank you. And then next, and I'll move on to the next. So I treated it as information rather than I should be doing it, because there was this real pull to do it very spiritually. And I tried to resist it. So what was your question? Where did I go with that?
What ways does shadow side show up in the
The
world?
shadow side is that superiority.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a shadow side of, and I think the group could go there rather than me saying it. Shadow side of therapy, shadow side of coaching, shadow side of supervision. Everything has its shadow side. And the more people know that, the more likely they are, the less likely they are to be run by it. But even that can have a shadow. I've done my shadow work. Have you? Everything can be used, you know, everything. But I do believe, as a general principle, the more we know about our shadow, Byron Katie, a spiritual teacher, she said, if you want to know the truth, get an enemy. I love that saying. If you want to know the truth, get an enemy. Because the enemy will tell you what your friends won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go on.
in terms of spirituality, and this is, I suppose, quite a personal question, so don't answer it if you don't want, Robin. Do you have you experienced spirituality, like more of it and less of it at different parts of your life?
Why wouldn't I want to answer that question? What's the
Ooh.
conditioning that makes you reluctant to ask that question? Can you see? Can you see what I mean? It's just like, look, we're up here. I'm telling everybody they've got to go inside. If I can't answer that question freely, then what am I talking about?
But
So,
there was there somatically something in my stomach when I said that of, oh, you know, maybe you didn't want to open up that much. Maybe I don't want to.
well, I don't know. You can speak for yourself, but if I weren't willing to, I think the whole thing would, I would just be putting on, well, I'm putting on a performance. You can't not perform. But what I mean is, of course, you're entitled to ask that question.
We set this up for I6, didn't we?
What?
Joke. We set this up for I6. Joking, of course.
I6. Okay, good. So ask it me again and I'll see what comes up.
So spirituality and your experiences of it throughout your life, has there been like more and less at certain times?
Okay, so you can understand the reluctance isn't because I don't want to share, it's I don't want to make myself special. I'm as much interested in other people's spirituality. So if you take the idea that I just happen to be talking, I want that question to go to everybody. So I'd like to give the group a moment to pause, and I will answer that question, but I want you to all go inside for yourselves and maybe put in the chat something if you want to, but I didn't want that. The idea is that somebody's more spiritual or less spiritual. I just wanted to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yes, I have, because, and I've written about this, that what changed my life totally, and I don't recommend it, was that I ate some dope when I was 21 and went psychotic. So I'm not suggesting that anybody eats dope or goes psychotic, but what I was really, and I was absolutely crazy. I mean, some of the imagery would belong to a psychiatric hospital, which is why I worked with psychiatric patients later on, because one of them said to the other, talking about me, he's one of us, because I could describe the whole psychotic episode in great detail and I knew about it. But what happened at the end of the psychotic episode, which only lasted about 2 hours, is that I saw that everything was made up. We were made up. It was all made up. And people do not like that idea, so you have to be quite gentle about it, because we're attached to our belief systems. And if I challenge a belief system, people feel like I'm robbing them of their identity. But I saw it was all made up. And I was really frightened. that the police were going to come and get me, and it was illegal, and blah, blah, blah. And I went, there's no fear. The fear is inside me. And I understood how we manufacture stories to justify the feeling of fear that we have inside us. We think it's the outside world that's making us frightened, but the fear is inside us, and then we find the evidence in the outside world. And that was so mind-blowing, to turn everything upside down. So it starts with us, and then we look for verification in the outside world. Whereas the normal way of being is that we see the outside world and then use that to justify what's going on inside us. And that completely blew my mind. Completely. And then I went off to India, and then I was lucky enough to get hepatitis, and I was, thinking I was going to die in hospital in Sri Lanka. And then I thought, well, if I die here, nobody will know. It's 1971, and there's no mobile phone. Nobody knows I'm here in the middle of nowhere in the Jaffna in the north of Sri Lanka. So let's see what happens if I go and let myself die. And I woke up with such complete peace. So those were my two spiritual experiences that really helped me to the way I approach my whole work. So even if you've asked me directly, sometimes I talk about them, sometimes I've had other ones too, but they've nearly always come from a crisis. I mean, you could call, it wasn't having hepatitis and going psychotic as crises, but it needed that because I'm so bloody stubborn. It needed something like that to really kind of just blow everything out. And I hope some people are more skillful than I am, that they don't have to go those particular routes.
And Robin, Tamara's written in the chat, you mentioned it's all made up.
Yes.
Could you expand on that?
Okay, this is going to be a bit controversial, as if I haven't been already. But basically, all this idea of qualifications, all this idea of just, it's, I'm a senior this, or I'm a master that, or we're all beginners. We're just all beginners. And all this propping ourselves up with, we're just propping ourselves up all the time. And at bottom, we're frightened of being found out as frauds. And I certainly, I'm very clear that at some level, we're all frauds. And I don't say that to put anyone down. I just say that's why I say, if you want to know the truth, get an enemy, because our friends will prop us up. That's why they're called friends. And so what was your question? I lose myself in my train of thought.
It's all made up.
It's all made up. So all this qualifications business, I'm sorry, I'm be treading on toes, but I hope I'm doing it lightly. It's all made up. Qualification. And I don't mean that people shouldn't go for them. I mean, we go for them because we love learning, and it might help us in our development. But to believe you're a master this or a professional that or whatever is just propping ourselves up, and I don't want to do that. And I don't want people to believe in I believe you should be qualified, not because of just because it's part of your ongoing inner work. Not because if you believe that there's no more work to do and you're resting on your qualification, that's, to me, is a misuse of the whole idea of qualifying. And then you get, organizations that decide whether you're fit to practice and whatever, and they're all made up. Sorry, but you might as well know my philosophy as you're asking me. So it's all made up. We make up stories. You hear two people's version of the same event and they're completely different. So they're made up. Yeah, go on.
I was just, it's almost like we need a half hour on every one of these topics. The chat's moving fast at the moment. So we've got something there around, some coaching schools, and I'm doing that, it really feels in a box for me. Some coaching schools, this is coaching, this is therapy. What are your views on, so what? What if there was this grey that was okay? I've reworded that question completely, but I think it sums up what was said.
Okay. I don't know about that distinction. It makes very little sense to me, but then I'm comfortable, you know, I'm comfortable with therapy. I'm comfortable with what comes up. So I think behind that question, I'd ask the person who asked it, is there a fear behind that question? Do you see, rather than answering the question, well, coaching is this and therapy is that, and you know, you don't do the overlap or you're in the grey area. Is there a fear behind that question? Is there a fear of not being able to manage oneself? If I say to you, you're my coach. If I say to you, actually, I think I'm going a bit psychotic. I dreamt last night that blah, blah, blah. The first thing you could do if you use mode 6 is look at the impact. What's happening inside you when I say that? Or I say, I feel like I want to murder my wife or something like that. And you go, eh. You could just say, gosh, that must be I'm noticing what's happening inside me as I feel scared. I wonder if you're scared having those thoughts. And immediately you lower the temperature. And then you can look at whether they go to a therapist or whether you can work with it or what. But having this idea there's a rule that you mustn't do this and you must do that. Rule making is often a form of laziness. I'll use the rule to tell me what to do rather than actually notice what's happening inside me in the moment. Do you see what I mean? So if it's too much for you, that's fair enough. I mean, you know, some things might be too much for me, or it's not, but I would be able to notice in the here and now what's happening. So with coachee or client, let's use the word client, I'm more comfortable with it. With client A, they say they want to murder their wife. I'm just giving you that as a projection of what's happening inside me. No, I'm joking. So they say they want, and I feel totally comfortable. I go, oh, they've shared it. They trust me. Let's work with this. Do you see? Client B, I'm going, shit, this guy could be dangerous. So I'm noticing, rather than having a rule, that's therapy, I can't go there. I'm noticing my response, which is why mode 6 is so valuable. Because I could be totally, same statement, I could be totally different with different people. I can't see, and this is going to be provocative again, I can't see how, if you're not comfortable in mode 6, how you can work. I mean, I can see you can do a professional job and you could, you know, do strategy and this, but there's a whole level that you're not touching. And I don't mean you just focus on mode 6, but have it as a resource. Doesn't mean you don't do strategy, which is mode 2, or client work, which is, you know, mode 7, or it doesn't mean you don't do them. But if you can't notice what's happening in the here and now, you're losing so much material. Let's see how we're doing, because we've only got 10 minutes.
We have. So I feel it's important also, there was one bit of Jonathan's question, I can't read very fast, so it was a bit reframed. And when there's the theories from therapy used in coaching, how do you feel about that? And take yourself off mute, Jonathan, if you wish to phrase it yourself.
Sure. I guess I was curious about your thoughts about coaching, because many coaches and coach trainers seem to feel that it's a different world. We don't have to or shouldn't learn from what we know from therapy.
Okay,
And I'm wondering if you would agree with that premise, and if so, do you have any thoughts about why or what, if anything, to do about it?
well, I think that therapists have things to learn from coaches, so I don't see why it shouldn't be the other way around. I mean, I think that therapists have blind spots around systems. I think if I want to know about mode 7, I wouldn't go to a therapist, I'd go to a coach. If I want to understand what's happening in an organization, I think the coaches would have a much better. So I don't see why it isn't, we can't learn from each other.
Yeah.
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 So tell me your question again. That's my first response.
No, well, I mean, I think that is the answer. But I guess the other question is, having been in both worlds, do you have any theories about why coaches haven't embraced more of, because it overlaps with what you're sharing today. These are a lot of really powerful concepts that are new to many coaches.
I think there might be a fear of going within. And I don't want to make a generalization, but I have seen it. I think therapists can also be frightened of going within. Let me just say that. So I don't want to kind of compartmentalize. I think there might be a fear of going within because actually shadow work, you're facing things that you don't want to face about yourself. But once you face them, it gives you you're much more able to work with difficulties without saying, oh, I can't manage that. And even if you do say, I can't, this is beyond my expertise, you're not doing it in a sense of out of fear or feeling a failure. You're just stating a simple fact. This is beyond my expertise. But if you say this is beyond my expertise and you're kind of all tense about it, or if you say it's beyond my expertise, you shouldn't have brought it, or do you see what I mean? It really is the more, let's call it shadow work, the more autobiography work that you do, doesn't matter, I don't care, coaching therapy doesn't matter, because as I say, I've seen very defensive therapists. I mean, really defensive therapists. And so I'm not trying to categorize, if you see what I mean, but I'm saying if you are willing to look at what's going on inside you, that's a life resource.
Absolutely. And I think some people become therapists or coaches as a way to not look within.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Good.
And if there's a really sort of, let's go mode 7, Robin,
Yeah.
if you had a magic wand, Aladdin's lamp, what do you want for our field, the field of supervision for future generations?
How I got into supervision was that it really, I was working in this therapeutic community for people who came out of psychiatric hospital. And if I hadn't had supervision, I would have burnt out. So, I learned all that I'm talking about now. Most of it I knew 50 years ago working in the therapeutic community, because I had to live it. There was no see you next week or see you next month. I was seeing this, it was residential, and I was seeing the person in the community after we'd had our session 5 minutes later, maybe in the kitchen or something like that. So I had to really, really live this work. And so I made it my mission. Mission is such a grandiose word. I don't mean it to be grandiose. I made it something I really wanted to do. I would have burnt out. And thank goodness I had supervision, and very, very good supervision. And I remember even saying, this is better than therapy, far better than therapy, because I have to apply what I've learned. The danger with therapy is you have a wonderful, insightful session and then go back to normal. Here, if I wasn't so I had to meet the residents an hour later, a day later, a minute later, after I'd had my supervision, and apply what I'd learned. So I got so much from being supervised so well that I thought, I want everybody to have this. So it was just like, I really want people to flourish at work. It's as simple as that. Well, I don't care what profession they're in. I really, really want to see people flourishing at work, because I really flourished in those 3.5 years I did in the therapeutic community. And I'm still drawing on it 50 years later. That's how good it was.
Wonderful.
I'm really sorry I haven't had a chance to look at all the chat I'm just gabbling away here, and I really would like to have seen more from your chat. So I'm sorry if I haven't responded to them.
So one last bit there. Sorry, I'm just letting someone in. One last bit there. Or autobiographical work is useful for our clients as much as for the coaches. Wonder why does coaching discourage, even prohibit coaches from probing in the past?
That is a
I want
question.
to answer that.
That is a question for coaches to answer, not me. I wouldn't presume to know, but all I'm really saying is that if you don't do it, you're limiting yourself.
Not the whole person, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
I tend to share when training, dip into the past, and then what are they experiencing now that they've reflected on that? And that's bringing it back into the present.
Lovely, yes. So we come to an end.
We do. What way would you like to end?
Well, I think I'm really sorry I haven't been able to respond to the chat because I've just been so involved in talking that I haven't been able to split my attention. But I'd appreciate if people could take a word or a phrase about how it's been for them. And you don't have to be nicey nice. You can say a load of crap and I won't be offended. But I'd like you to be honest and just put a word about how it's been for you or a phrase or something.
Beautiful. Fascinating, wonderfully provocative, go crisis, yay, enjoyable, refreshing, insightful, very fast is my thing, integrating, interesting, fun, nice, evocative, frustrating and provoking, powerful. We are all made up. Reassuring, interesting, institution, provocative as ever. Would love to partner with you. Love this. Why wouldn't I want to self-inquire, curious, recovery, deeply interesting? And I'll stop with such a free person.
So you think? We all have our shadow. Yeah, but yeah, I love this work because I think that people really, really deeply want to love. They are love. And what we're doing is dismantling some of the blocks. And that's why I'm a bit cautious around all this professionalism and competences and everything, because fundamentally, and it's a good place to end, it's really about how we express our love. And that's beyond any categories of coach, therapist, supervisor, this, that, and the other. That's fundamentally what it is about, I think. So,
Robin,
thank you.
thank you so much. And there's hearts going in the chat and flowers. And I need to listen back to this because having a few different hats on in the session, I need to listen back myself. But I really feel that even this hour, this conversation is so much needed in our world. So thank you.
Thank you for asking me, and thank you all for coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. And with your permission, we will share it, Robin, for the ones who couldn't attend. Fantastic.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.